I was.
Can't just have.
Friday, trying to hold on the resident.
So I know for
That
those
site.
conversation during.
Yeah, so after 4 days,
You want to make there wasn't like there's a
Good evening. Being 6 o'clock, I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for being here tonight. First item on the agenda is a call to order, and then the approval of the minutes of June 20th, 2022, public and non-public. How do my fellow selectmen feel about those?
And nothing.
I read them pretty carefully. I liked them, thought they were good.
I thought they were good.
Yeah, excellent. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. We approve both sets of minutes, non-public and public as printed.
Second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next up, we have board reports. Do we have any board reports? I have none.
Planning board met. It was, most of the agenda was canceled due to different, planning and lack of notification accidentally of some abutters. But the really exciting piece that I think everyone should pay attention to needs to go to ZBA. And that is the folks who own Mickey's have applied to move their patio from that corner out front back to where it kind of previously resided along that brook. And they've outlined the footprint. They put together a very nice packet, probably one of the, the best one I've ever seen. I don't know if Dan can speak to it, but very nice packet. They're proposing that they're going to do tables, chairs, and then have seasonal coverings, so like a tent type covering. But the really cool part is they are planning to, if approved by ZBA, put up igloos, and they are these clear igloos that you can sit in. Their dining rest up in Burlington, I think. They've been to one in New York, so it's a pretty neat proposal. So we'll see how that goes with CBA, but certainly really exciting and something that would attract people to Enfields.
Was parking discussed?
Parking was discussed, yep. And so basically the parking the pattern will still continue. They already have, it's not in place, but they have in their possession a speed bump, and we declined to instruct them how to install or where, because it really makes sense for safety, because they already are compliant in terms of the number of parking spaces. I learned something very interesting, which is that we have, so basically you hardly need any parking spaces to have a restaurant in Enfield. That's the rules are, we're shockingly loose on that. So, but they had plans to put up a kind of a dividing wall to protect their patio area. If you've been in Lebanon along as you turn onto Mechanic Street, something to that nature, there are 2 companies locally that make them. So they were pricing them out and doing availability on those that would protect the diners. And then they were going to put some slots in along there. They were also looking at realigning where 1 out of 2 of the rear handicap spots were. So, and then the traffic would continue to flow around the building, and they'd remove that front space.
Are they still using the church's parking? I know at one point that was part of their deal.
Yep, and they have an agreement with the church. It's a private agreement where they plow and do some things together. So it's a nice partnership to make sure that they will still have plowing, because that was one of the questions that was asked, was where will you plow to? So, yeah, and the packet, if anyone wants to see it, can give a quick buzz to Rob Taylor, or I can probably have a copy as well. So, but it's very, very interesting. Yep, you have it. So, but it's really neat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything to report?
Not a lot to report, but I was able to attend my first Heritage Commission meeting, which was educational for myself. A lot of discussion around continuing to educate the town on what the Heritage Commission does and their value, and they've written some nice articles in the monthly town report, which was nice, and then also some initial planning for Old Home Days in September.
Thank you. So next we have the town manager's report.
So I'll start as I have in the past with the staff report. happy to report that we hired Aaron Westfall as the new janitor / building maintenance specialist. So the budgeted facilities maintenance position has been filled. He started today. We're excited to bring him on board and to get things moving forward there. I'm also happy to report with that, we're pretty much full on staff. We did put out a ad today for a part-time police assistant that we'll be trying to fill before the school year to help with the crossing guard and other stuff around the police station. But other than that, we're full on staff right now. So happy to report that.
You may not know, but how long has it been since we were fully staffed? I think it's a good milestone.
Couple of years, at least.
I feel like it's been years, and so I think
It's
that's
well
a really
before
good thing.
That it's a good sign considering how much other towns are struggling to
Yes.
staff.
And how much money they're throwing at staffing.
Yeah.
It's very competitive.
Yeah, good point.
So with that, I sent it in an email, but I'd like everybody to know that the town of Enfield, we submitted that byways grant that was approved for parking along Mascoma Lakeside Park, and then also a multi-purpose trail from the Shakoma Beach area down 4A to the Shaker Village across Lawton Select, right in that area. The proposal was to put it up on the sewer easement, so if you drive along there, you can see a raised flat section. That's where we're looking at putting that. As part of the grant process, everybody in the state of New Hampshire was supposed to send their applications to the Department of Transportation. The Department of Transportation reviewed those grants and they chose one grant to go on to the Federal Highway Administration. I'm happy to announce that the town of Enfield's grant was chosen for that.
Wow.
Awesome.
So we moved to the next,
Excellent.
move to the next hurdle, and hopefully we get good news from them and move forward with that project.
That's a really big deal to connect to downtown essentially.
Yeah, it'll connect a lot of stuff together, and some of it also, as you guys know, we've had some, I'll talk about that some more too, but our pedestrian issue with the crossing this year and the fatality, that part of that grant was also to put a couple crosswalks with the rapidly flashing beacons to improve pedestrian safety. So we're hopeful that that'll come through and we'll be able to do that. I'd like to also let the select board know that we were recognized as a Tree City USA again this year. So thanks to everybody for the hard work. To achieve this recognition, you have to have a tree board, have a tree ordinance, having a forestry budget of at least 2% per capita, and observe Arbor Day through a proclamation. So we taking care of our trees seriously, and it's nice to again receive that recognition.
Who is our tree board? I learned something new every meeting.
I don't know what the board is, but
Jim?
it may be, it said or department.
Oh,
so
okay,
It may just be that
okay.
we recognize that the work for that, but we also,
Got it.
we're supposed to have a tree board.
We have the position.
We
There you
have,
go.
do we have one? Do we have that?
That sounded like a volunteer.
Not someone, you may know, but
I don't know anybody who does trees.
So I want to move on and thank the Enfield Select Board for their support for me attending Leadership Upper Valley. I was notified this month that I've been accepted into the program and will be starting Leadership Upper Valley in September. So thank you. Again, back to the tragic events we had. As you know, last year we had the vehicle versus horse accident, and recently we had the pedestrian hit on 4A. Had a couple meetings when I first started, and the Enfield Police Department worked on putting this pamphlet together. I'll pass it around so you can look at it. But it's a share the road pamphlet, really. It talks about bicycle safety, pedestrian safety, and equestrian rider safety, and it has some of the rules and laws in there and some things that car owners and drivers should know. So just some of the laws and safety guidelines that could be had in there. So I thank the police department for putting that pamphlet together, to share with the citizens and visitors of our town. I'd also like to update, you did get something in your packet, but as of today, from the July 1st tax billing, we are about 95.5% collected from the first property tax bill. So we're doing well and taxes are getting paid. Kind of segueing from that, we went through the tax heating in the last meeting, and I'm happy to report out of the list that we supplied you last meeting, we only ended up taking one to tax deed. It's a mobile home in the Lakeside Cooperative there. The person actually walked away from the mobile home. I've talked to that person and they have no plans on repurchasing that. So we'll be working on the paperwork for that. But with it, it did give me the opportunity to finish a project I was working on in Claremont when I moved up here. And I worked with Jim Raymond, and we wrote a contract between any mobile home park owner and the town to allow us to take a mobile home like this without the fear of having to be stuck paying that back park rent or any other fees. So what we do is we'll take the mobile home, we'll put it up for public sale. If it does not sell, the cooperative has signed an agreement that they would release us from all fees and park rent, and we would sell them the mobile home for $1. I don't know if it's a win-win or a lose.
I think it's a win-win. That's perfect.
It sounds fair.
Yeah, really.
It helps
It's
everybody.
the best possible outcome.
I was stuck in an issue in Claremont where the town wouldn't take the mobile home because they didn't want the park rent or fees, and it ended up going on for almost 10 years where they wouldn't take the mobile home and the park was stuck with a mobile home on a lot they couldn't rent. So I think it'll be something that'll work out, and the cooperative was excited, and I was happy to be able to do this and move through. With that, I wanted to give a little Shed Street update. I know we've had a few questions on that. We're currently doing a little bit more work, some exploratory digging at Shed Street. It hasn't started yet, but we'll be doing some exploratory digging. After the phase 2, there were a couple areas, one of them being wherever the leach field may be, that they wanted to do some final testing before they put a complete plan of what needed to be remediated and how it needed to be done. So I've talked with the phase 2 environmental group that did our testing and DPW, and we're going to be out there pretty soon doing a little exploratory digging to see if we can find some areas for them to come in and do some testing to finish that up. And then once that's done, we'll work with the select board on figuring out what and how we're going to clean it up and what we're going to do with that property. I'll come back to you with that. And then finally, wanted to give an update on the building projects that we have, the public safety facility. One thing I've heard a lot about is what are we doing on the lot? Where are we going with that? I'm continuing to work. Brett Lowe came down a couple weeks ago to help out with no cost associated to look at the Shaker Hill Granite site, and Bob LaCroix has come forward with a 4-acre lot across from the car audio place. He was going to donate that as long as we brought in water, sewer, and electric into that area. So I brought Brent Loaf down there looking at the area, looking at what the cost would be to clear the land and bring utilities in and a road in, and then looking at the Shaker Hill Granite site to make sure that we get the best bang for our buck in the best location. So we're finishing up that due diligence before we make a final decision on what we're going to do. With that, the MFAC committee and myself, we released an RFQ a few weeks ago. We did get the RFP proposals back today. We got 5 proposals submitted from design build companies, and we will be reviewing those this week. I've asked the committee to review the proposals on their own and rank the companies, and then send those to me. I'll conglomerate them together into one master matrix, if you will. And then on July 26th, next week at our meeting, we plan to discuss the proposals, go through the scoring, and hopefully narrow that down to 2 to 3 companies that will release an RFP to get a little bit more information before making our final decision. Hope to have them on board by September to start the design process. Looking forward. And then on the Whitney Hall project, I continue to work with the USDA. We have to get architectural approval of the conceptual designs, and right now they're reviewing the bread loaf contract to help me as we move forward to write an RFQ that would allow bread loaf to be able to bid on this. So with federal guidelines, they're just a little bit stricter, and they're helping approve everything and guide us through the process to get that done. So I'm hopeful by the end of the year that we can secure some sort of interest rate financing and that we secure a contractor for the Whitney Hall project. That's it for my town manager's report, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, has a question.
Oh, Dave.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Regarding the safety measures pamphlet that Chief Holland and a small group of people did, I think that is excellent, but I think can be supplemented, and he and I have talked about it with a short sections on best practices that may not just be legal requirements. So I would suggest that that be reinvigorated and considered further. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions?
I had just questions on the collection. So the summer, you're referring to the summary year-to-date for tax collections, I'm assuming. So I always have trouble reading this, I won't lie. So the betterment is, there's betterment 1 and 2. Is that the 2 locations? This is where I always get.
There should be a legend at the bottom of that.
Yeah, the odds and evens. So is 1 is LVC. Oh,
So the
Lakeview
odd number,
condominium, okay. and
the odd
2.
number betterments are Lakeview condos, and the even number betterments are Sugar Landing.
Okay. So we're continuing, am I reading this correctly, that we're continuing to struggle with the Lakeview payments? It's like this, saying 84% paid. What? It's the expectation of 100.
That's on a per person basis, right?
The betterment assessments are, yeah, individual by unit. And over time, when we had, there were many long discussions, not to go back deep in history, but about what would happen if some of the individuals didn't pay, because we still have to pay on behalf of Lakeview. And so we committed to pretty solid monitoring, and also a slight, like, we built in an expectation that a certain number of people may or may not pay that will float, and then obviously the final bill, X number of years out, will take into account. So I guess my question is, we've done this before where we've kindly reminded the board that, hey, your payments are dipping as an aggregate below this, so that they could nudge their folks, because if we aren't getting full payment, 84% is not enough to make, I don't remember what we set, but we did not set more than a 15% leeway. And I just don't remember off the top of my head. So they're already outside of the leeway we set, which means that our town people are subsidizing them not paying their betterment already.
Except that we have been charging on the first 10 payments an extra $100 per payment to provide a buffer. So we'd have
Right,
to look at the
Yeah, I think
amount
you
in
want to see.
because the funds are kept in a separate account,
Mhm.
we have not had to dip into anything outside of that. We've strictly been using those funds.
Right, and so they're borrowing for themselves. I'm wondering at what point the balance tips and how close we are. I just want to make sure that fund, right, the extra 100, is something that's, I just don't want to come to hard feelings later. I want to address it straight up and just say to them, hey, you know what, look, we're seeing it slip a little. It may be the same individual, it may be new, and just set the expectation that they keep up, because we did tell them that we would set their rate differently if we found that they were sliding. And I think it was a really important project, and I don't want to ruin the good work we did.
Any other comments? Okay, nothing under communications at this time. First item under business is Zach, Eagle Scout Project. Zach Largus.
This is Zach Largus, everyone. He is working on an Eagle Scout project. He approached the fire department probably 2 months ago or so. What his proposal is, he'd like to put up a fire danger sign for the fire department, which is the forest fire danger. And thinking about location, decided that the Enfield Central Station would be most advantageous for the town at this point. Then we'll work on something else down the road. But I'm gonna let Zach explain what he's proposing and who he's met with, and
So I'm proposing it's a 4 by 5.5 foot sign. Like most other fire danger warning signs, it has like the half wheel with warnings or different labels. As of right now, I've talked with someone from the state to see how far back I had to be from the road. I've talked to a few people in the town, and I'm working on all the permits I need.
we came through the other day and met with Jim and Rob. He has a sign application, which where it's town property, the board would need to sign for the town. And he's also got it marked over there. There's a stick with a red flag. But if anybody, it's almost in line with the building. The building is right on the right of way edge, actually. And where the mill wheel is, so it'd be between the mill wheel and the fire station on that rise. I think one of the other important things I just thought of, Zach, is that he has talked with 2 of the scoutmasters who would undertake the changing of that during the season. That automatically comes from the state. We get it by email. We can get them onto that same list. They get an email every morning. And then they have agreed that between the 2 of them, that they would exchange.
So the sign is gonna be behind the mill wheel?
No, it's gonna be between the mill wheel and the building.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the rise was there, John. I don't know if it was just a pile that had gotten left there, but it's a pretty ideal spot. And the sign, he's making the sign so that if it was ever needed to be moved, it can be moved. He's doing the concrete in 5-gallon pails, putting the posts in.
Yeah.
Then setting the post, setting the sign. Be unlit, of course, so there'd be no wiring involved, so that the building inspector should be satisfied with that.
Sounds like a very useful project. Yeah, very nice.
In the future, so the Scoutmasters will change. Obviously, people eventually move on to new projects. I know some Scoutmasters stay for a lifetime, which is fabulous, but is there any kind of idea of what might?
Contingency
like-
would be that there's some of our own firefighters
Okay.
that live in the area, but we thought starting off with a volunteer.
Yeah.
Go with those.
Right.
I'll make a motion to authorize the placement of a fire danger sign at Enfield Center Fire Station by Zach Largus as part of his Eagle Scout project.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Zach, thank you very much.
Thank you. Send pictures to Elisa when you're.
He will just need a signature on the applicant, excuse me, as the property. As the chair, so that he can complete that and get that turned in.
Name of owner.
Yeah.
Go get a watch. It's been a long night. I don't answer any.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and you don't have to stay for the whole meeting. Okay, next up, skid unit bid results and recommendation.
So I'll turn this over to the Chief Bill Neely. We did go out to bid for a CEP brand self-contained forestry skid unit, and I'll just let him talk about the unit itself and their bid process.
This was a skid unit for the forestry that we're changing from rescue, turning that into a forestry unit. Where it was over 10,000, we did go out for bids. It probably went to 6 or 8 people. We got back 3 bids, and I'm not sure if the bids were put into your packet. Okay. And after reviewing the bids and after reviewing the equipment, my recommendation is to go with Fire Tech and Safety for a CET brand unit. Sometimes the lowest bid does scare me, but I had the rep in, went through item by item by item, and I feel confident that it is complete and that everybody was bidding the same material, same unit, and everybody had the same bid package. The difference for the price is that they have master distributors and regular distributors. Fire Tech and Safety is a master distributor, and he told me without him knowing what the bids were initially, what the difference was going to be because of them being the master distributor.
Just out of curiosity, what does this piece of equipment do?
That's what I want to know.
So what this will do is, so we'll go back a little bit. The old rescue had the old ambulance body on it.
Yeah.
That's been removed. Highway has it. They're doing a couple of repairs on it. Then it's going to go to Dyer's Welding, and a flatbed aluminum body is going to be put on. This skid unit is made to be removable seasonally. On this unit, there's a pump, there's an engine, there's 250 gallons of water, there's a foam unit. So this becomes our first attack piece, if you will, on a forest fire or a brush fire. We did bump the size of the engine up a little bit so that when ISO comes again, it will show as another draft piece because we will be able to do water supply with it. So, not a great deal of difference in money from 17 horse to a 20 horse. It just made sense to do. And so it's a complete pump, tank, engine unit that works independently of the truck completely.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. You want to make the motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to award the bid for a CET brand self-contained forestry unit to Fire Tech and Safety of New England in an amount not to exceed $16,995 and to authorize the town manager or their designee to take all actions and execute documents as necessary to complete the purchase and installation of this unit.
I will second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and next up, we have wildlife signs. That was a lot of information there. Who's going to lead the attack here?
I'll start with a brief intro again, but as you guys remember, we talked about this a couple meetings ago and asked for a little bit of time for the police chief to do some data and some research on where these wildlife signs should be placed. He did pull our incident data. He asked for some data back from the state we haven't received yet, but you did see in your packet that there was some information that DOT and Fish and Game recommend on placement of signs. Also in your packet is some information from the Conservation Commission, and Dr. Tice is here to speak on that this evening. So I would like to turn it over to Chief Holland to talk about what he had, and then when you guys are ready, Dr. Tice can speak on the Conservation Commission piece.
So obviously, as you said, I got as much data as I could to forward on to the select board. It's actually on state roads. It's quite a process for the wildlife crossing signs. the town would make a recommendation to the state or request to the state. State would then forward that request on to Fish and Game. Fish and Game would have their biologists look at the area to see if it does actually hold or prescribe to a wildlife kind of crossing area habitat. And then they would reach out to New Hampshire State Highway for crash data. Their kind of metrics they go by is, when they first look at it, is there are 5 accidents a year for at least 3 years running. That's kind of from the officers that I talked to, that's kind of the minimum of what they look at before they actually start considering it. But on that whole other side of that coin, I guess I say is Eric had asked me to look into, even if right now, currently, the state, even if it reaches their kind of metrics of where they say, okay, maybe we should put up a sign, their recommendation is not to. So New Hampshire Highway has actually been collecting data. They're working with the college. I think I forwarded the study that's going on so far. They're collecting the data, and all their data that they're getting back shows that there's actually 0 effect to putting up the signs. And they can start, and they're still collecting the data. But what they're looking at is they now, since they started the project, I think I want to say, if I remember, it was 3 years ago, they looked at the data prior to putting up some signs, and then now in 3 years, has there been any reduction? And they're saying, no, they're actually seeing what the state of New Hampshire and National Highway Traffic Safety is looking at is are we putting up too many signs? Are we create white noise? And so their recommendation right now is to not put up signs. My recommendation to the board is I think that we should follow what state of New Hampshire is doing, and that is that not even look at putting up a sign until it meets that minimum. And then I'm not an absolute. I really don't like absolutes. Absolutes don't fit in a lot of categories. So I would never say never put up a sign, but I would say that we don't consider even putting up a sign unless it meets that metrics of are we getting 5 accidents or more a year, 3 years in a row. The data that I pulled from the roads in question, one already has a sign, and that's got the most, next to Shaker Hill Road, that's got the most deer deer animal hits that we have, which is, I think I pulled it from August of 2018 to June. We had a total of 26 accidents on those roads, 6 directly involved animals, and 11 that could be animals involved. And that, just for a little more clarification on that, is if somebody calls in a couple days later and said, I swerved out of the road for either an animal or something in the road, that gets logged in as possibly something else. So the only data I don't have is non-reportable accidents. So that's if any accident under $1,000 is not required to report it to the police department, or if you hit a deer on a road and you call the station the next day, you do a self-report, those go directly to the state. Unfortunately, I'm still waiting on the data from the state on that, but even the data that comes back, I don't think it would change. My recommendation right now is that none of the roads that were in question meets the metrics of putting up signs. And when they do, I can bring it back to Ed and bring it back to the board and talk about if a road, really qualifies for a sign, and if it's going to be just white noise or if it's going to make an effect to people not getting animals.
It's really helpful. Thank you.
One question, one of the metrics involved the Dustin Road, which is a class 6 road, the one that goes between Klug Road and Lock Haven Road. How could there be an animal injury on a class 6 road? You would just sort of creep along, something like that.
Is this the data from, is this from conservation?
That's from the.
Oh, that's from Conservation. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I was not,
Pull that offline.
My mistake.
That's not the.
and this is
Yeah, all right.
conservation.
Yes.
Okay, I discussed by basis of the call.
Yeah.
Photocopy.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right. Dr. Tice.
Yeah, I have a question. What roads are you speaking of? State-owned roads or the town-owned?
For what? For which one?
For the signing, we're on it. Because I was told that the Board of Selectmen has to approve town road signs, but roads like 4 and 4A that are state maintained are not on that suggested list that I have, that the Conservation Commission had. So what is it?
That'd be correct. State-owned roads would have to be authorized by the state. Town-owned roads would have to be authorized by the select.
Right, but the town roads don't have to be authorized by the state. Okay. So the data that has been collected, that you have copies of from Kurt Goddard over the years, shows a considerable number of wildlife crossings. Enfield itself is cut up considerably by roads that people travel. Lock Haven, for example, crosses virtually every corridor, wildlife corridor in Enfield. So what the Conservation Commission was interested in was putting up signs on the town roads, because that's where most potential for contact with wildlife is. There are animals that do cross 4A. Conservation Commission has put up game cameras facing those roads on property with the property owner's permission. And we haven't seen as many animals crossing those roads at all, but we're using the term wildlife crossings because, as Mr. Goddard has indicated, there's a considerable number of other animals, bears, coyotes, moose, and those animals are also crossing the same areas. So it's the town roads that our application or our interest is in, not in the state-owned roads. So it seems to me that this is a matter for the Board of Selectmen to decide. Now, we had suggested, because there has been damage done to automobiles, and Mr. Taylor, Jim Taylor, has also suggested that there be a sign put up in what's that lake up there that people go canoeing in that runs down into
Grafton Pond?
Yeah, Grafton Pond Road. He's claimed that some of his workmen have encountered animals there and hit them. There's also a animal that was killed on Tube Road a year or so ago, and these are areas where people are traveling at nighttime. The snowmobile people, the snow plow people may have hit the deer that was killed on Tube Road. But the point is that prevention in these situations and advising the public to slow down is a public safety issue. You've just passed around a brochure for public safety on bicycles. But I think that the idea of preventing people from having their cars smashed in, and in some cases being killed themselves, particularly if they run into a moose, which goes through their windshield, is certainly worth waiting until you have 5 or 6 people killed on that road, which is not really relevant because it's a state that's asking for that kind of data, and we're not asking for these signs to be put on the state roads.
I have a question. So has DPW issued some kind of letter of requesting more signs?
No, I talked to Jim today. He said this was a conservation.
Oh, okay, because I want to make sure we're not misrepresenting a department and understanding. So we don't have a formalized request from them individually. Would it be standard procedure if they hit and kill an animal for it to be reported? Like if they're plowing and they hit a deer?
Yeah, and I believe that.
So we shouldn't be guessing about if so-and-so hit something, because if it was a town employee hitting it, the expectation is it would get reported.
Well,
I see Chief standing.
both of those roads were in the report.
Mhm.
So,
I think the question wasn't whether we need state approval or not. My recommendation to the town is that the select board not approve putting a sign up on a road unless it meets the same standard that the state does. And I think that the reason is that all the studies are showing that signs do not prevent accidents. They don't prevent crashes. The data clearly shows that if we put a sign up today, that it has no effect on whether more deer or bear or moose are gonna get hit on Klug Road or on Grafton Pond Road or several of the other ones that were on the thing. So my recommendation would be that we don't put them up, because I feel that the more signs we put up, the more they become white noise. When we want to put up a sign, when we need to put up a sign, we want people to pay attention to it. And I'll use a great example just personally. This year, we've changed campers from a tow behind camper to a fifth wheel camper. The first time I was driving into the campground, all of a sudden I said to myself, oh geez, now I got to pay attention to the height signs of bridges and stuff like that. I had never paid attention to those until I had that camper. I don't know how many I've passed in the last 30 years of driving. So that kind of tells you where signs become white noise, because they're pasted everywhere. You know, if you honestly say to yourself, if I pull onto Klug Road and I see a deer sign, am I going to slow down from the posted speed limit? The answer is no. It's not. Now, the other part that we have is that, for instance, Jones Hill is on the list. It already has a sign. It's still next to Shaker Hill Road. That is our #1 road for deer. That's our #1 town road for deer being hit on that road. When I pull that up and you plot it, they're not in one small location. They're not within 100 yards. They're within the 2-mile stretch of that road. So, you know, after you get 100 feet past the sign and no deer crossing sign, somebody may pay attention for that first 100 feet, 150 feet. After that, they keep going. So I think that we put ourselves in a situation when we post the sign that maintenance replace when it's not reflective anymore and it becomes white noise. So my recommendation to the board would be, at this time, I don't think any of the roads in question meet the need for a wildlife crossing time.
I'd like
Well,
to
let me
make a
just
motion.
add this,
Excuse me, I'd like to make a motion, and you can speak when the chair allows you to. I'd like to make a motion that we set the expectation on installing new animal crossing traffic signs to be aligned with the state number, which is 5 or more crashes due to animal crossings per year over a 3-year period.
Recommend we do with the state policy, because they could change that.
Or state policy, sure, align with state policy, I mean,
To align with state policy.
I'll amend my motion to do that.
We have a motion, we have a second. Sir,
Ready when you guys heard discussion. We can make that motion, but I would recommend we write a policy on how we place signs, and wildlife crossing can be part of that.
okay.
But I think it's a good idea to have a policy in place of how and when we.
So I'll withdraw that motion and make a motion that we ask our town manager's office to create a policy in draft form to bring to the board.
That was gonna be my suggestion, that we
Okay.
create a town policy for employees to follow.
Mhm.
My personal view is, we have a state agency that is collecting the data and has created something. Having single policies always make more sense. So I would suggest following the state recommendations. This is a public safety issue. If we don't have evidence that we're solving a public safety problem, then taking on the expense of buying, installing, and maintaining signs without a clear benefit doesn't make a lot of sense. If all they do is educate people on where wildlife corridors are, which can be very valuable, there's probably another avenue to undergo that education beyond adding signs to our streets.
We have a YouTube channel.
Let me,
Dr. Tyson,
yes,
final comment.
well, I have two. First of all, the signs do not just say wildlife crossing, they say wildlife crossing for the next 2.5 miles. So the idea of putting them at the beginning of the road and having people forget about them is not correct. They can see that there's going to be wildlife crossing potentially on the whole road. Second of all, Conservation Commission has already agreed to pay for the signs and pay for their installation, so it costs the city nothing. Thirdly, the idea of preventing these kinds of accidents, whether they involve people or just the wildlife, is worthwhile rather than waiting until you've got a whole bunch of accidents before you justify putting something up. Being forewarned is better than waiting until your house burns down and then taking out, like, taking out fire insurance. And this is basically what this is all about, because it's not just large animals. There's a whole bunch of other things that are being run over. I've seen more dead porcupines now than I have live ones. And those are those are animals that are important in an ecosystem. You're thinking about just public safety. This is not necessarily the be all and end all of these signs. So I would agree that I think that the town manager and the conservation commission should get together. I think we should show him, if he hasn't already seen it, the data that Kurt Goddard has built up over many years, showing the degree to which fragmentation has occurred in the field, and that the deer and other animals are crossing his road frequently than you think.
My feeling is, the one thing we absolutely want to avoid is having signs on every single dirt road in town. That will be absolutely counterproductive. I mean, if we
Not
could
every
pick
road.
2 roads and have signs, I could be convinced. Yes, sir.
Just, I'm kind of on where the chief is. If I see a sign that says wildlife crossing next 5 miles, after about the first 200 yards, if I haven't seen it, I'm just, nothing's changed. And Lockhaven Road, I know they cross. I don't need a sign to tell me that they cross. So if we keep putting up I agree, if we keep putting up all these signs, it's going to be white noise.
I describe visitors to our farm because I live at the end of Lockhaven Road. I'm about maybe 0.2 miles from the very end, and I frequently travel through it to Canaan. I tell everybody who comes to our farm, which has a lot of visitors, driving out Lockhaven is the adult version of Frogger. You are going to have something run in front of you. It is long, it is windy. Please pay attention. But that's something that as a community, we can tell people. What I say to people, I think, is more effective than the sign they're going to ignore. And I will out myself and say, the police have very kindly stopped me and asked me if I knew the speed limit on Shaker Hill Road, and I didn't. Because honestly, I remember when I started driving, I'm pretty sure it was different, right? Do you think I looked at it since I was in driver's ed? I'm not gonna lie. And then I was like, oh, very embarrassing, right? So of course, I mean, I admit, I think we all have that moment. You have to automate certain decisions. You can only make so many decisions and take in so much data in one day and get used to certain things. So the best thing you can do is promote awareness and have people, pay attention to what's in the periphery. The object that's moving that you're about to hit is much more interesting to your brain than the thing it sees every day, which is going to delete and pass right by.
Sir, could you give us your name?
Doug Smith, Oak Hill Road. To speak to one particular thing that the doctor brought up about Grafton Pond Road. I live on Oak Hill Road, southern end, so I travel Grafton Pond Road several times a day. Biggest problem with wildlife out there with the contractors is their rate of speed. They slow down a little bit, so the contractors that are being mentioned by the doctor's notes, they're the ones that the very young male drivers are the ones who consistently drive too fast to Grafton Pond Road. The chief and his personnel are out there more than we deserve, given the remoteness of our neighborhood, but they're always out there and they keep me out there all the time. So I think it's a speed issue much more than a animal crossing issue.
That road was not made for over 25.
And certainly, Klug Road has become pretty well developed. There are a lot of houses on it. There are a lot of animals. But it's a shortest route between point A and point B. Truckers' speed, people's speed, students' speed, I'll bet teachers' speed.
I'm gonna be mean and say almost no one stops at the Potato Lockhaven crossing. Don't ever drive into that expecting not to get hit, right? People just, it's something that it's a societal issue, and I think we're not gonna solve it with a sign.
Yeah, I'm wondering, does Klug Road need deer or animal crossing sign? I'm not sure. I should think the average sane person would realize this is a dirt road. There are a lot of trees here. there's big cemetery with lots of grass in it.
There's those chickens that are in the road.
That's another thing.
I know the chickens are there, and so I'm like, yo, chickens. I've definitely gone out and shoved someone out of the road before. It happens. It's New Hampshire.
Yeah, so it's a quandary, but I do believe the more signs we put up, it's gonna be counterproductive.
It's the same thing.
If we chose one or two roads and said, these are crucial, I could live with that.
At 6:30 tomorrow morning, I'm gonna drive down 4A. There's gonna be at least 25 turkeys between the top of the hill before you get to the Springfield line. They're there every day.
Yeah.
Every morning at 6:30, they're out. You know it. You slow down because you know they're gonna be there.
Get a
You don't
tag.
need a sign to tell me.
Okay. So I think we're gonna close this discussion, and we have a suggestion that the town manager is gonna put something together for us.
And it's actually in a form of a motion, so we need to-
Okay, can we have you wanna make a motion?
We already have one on the.
You have a motion.
Do we have it clear enough so that you have it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All in favor?
Right.
Aye. All right, thank you very much. Trash receptacles at town parks.
So
We've been there before.
I've been talking about this for a while. Pretty much since I've been here, this has been being talked about. I was working with Jim, working with Rick. We've been working on a plan to possibly put trash cans back in the park. As you guys may know, we've had a pretty big issue this year with Hughes Park. I always thought Mascoma Lakeside Park was so clean and beautiful, and then I learned a couple weeks ago that there's a couple ladies that go down there every single morning to clean the park. So, I mean, we do have these issues. We put a test trash can at Hughes Park, and the grounds people said it helped tremendously. So, speaking with Jim, we talked about this. We want to put trash cans at Hughes Park, Mascoma Lakeside Park, Shakoma Beach, and I think we're gonna do Shaker Ball Field, but we're still talking about where and how, and do we want them out all the time, because the camps load a bunch of trash into them, so we're having that discussion. I was thinking, hey, this is an operational issue, I'm just gonna take this on, and then I was told that the select board had discussed this before and had this determined to use sharing.
I think at that time, Jim was pretty resistant to the idea.
Yeah.
I don't remember the select board making a motion or ordering it one way or another. I remember there being discussion and us being short on staff.
Yes. Yeah, I don't believe a motion was ever made. Yeah,
And that's because my question is, who's gonna empty them and at what frequency?
yes, right.
We've
That's the key
We've
point.
been talking through that. I talked to Jim today.
Yeah.
Rick, our grounds person, is, I don't know if I want to use the word adamant, but he's very supportive of putting trash cans back out.
Yeah.
He said most of these parks, they're in there 2 to 3 times a week, that he would be checking them on at least Monday, Fridays, and possibly Wednesdays. We also just hired a new facilities person that we can communicate with, and then talking with Jim. If none of them can make it one day and we need someone out there, we have quite a few DPW staff and other employees that can get out and change the trash bag if needed. Talking with him, I think we're looking at 4 to 5 trash cans. I do highly recommend, and he agrees with me, that we'll move forward with trash cans that are maybe a little more expensive, but they have the small right size holes for recycling and trash. They're weather resistant,
Yes.
they're locked, all the
Yes.
good things that go
Yes.
along with.
Yeah, there are lots, so someone can't dump their bag of household trash.
Yeah.
And Rick lock for the community buildings. So you can only budget open to throw like something small
Oh,
in.
and the dumpster.
Yeah, can we get
may
a
work
small?
with that.
Yeah.
We'll figure those things out, but, you know, I guess what I'm looking at in here, and I did not write a motion for you guys, I plan on moving forward and doing this, and.
I think you have our full support, yes?
Yeah, yes, I guess that's,
Anecdotally, oh, go ahead.
I was just saying from a staff, standpoint, how's our new Parks and Rec director? feel about it?
He's doing
Okay, because,
really good.
no, well, in the end, right, he'll be collecting trash, because he'll get the phone calls about the parks.
A little bit.
Right.
I mean, we're gonna be working together. I talked to
Yeah.
him today.
No, I-
We need to have someone in every park every day checking the trash cans. We have the staff to do that.
Okay,
They'll
that's
make
great.
it happen.
And the reason I said anecdotally is because Kevin, our new recreation director, happened to be behind me as my very first market customer, but Em was there too, I think. Walked up to me and was like, do you have a trash can? And like literally just doesn't even wait and like hands me their trash. And I'm like, here we go again. It's like, I'm the local dumpster.
And it's your, good Lord.
No, and I don't think I've ever seen this person, so they don't know that I'm the traditional dumpster at the beginning. I didn't have it out anywhere. I was like, we don't even have a bag out yet.
Well, someone pointed you out. That's the dumpster lady
That's the
over there.
dumpster lady. She'll take your trash.
So we'll position them correctly. One of the things we talked about was making them convenient enough that they're be used, but not
Yeah.
right in the parking lot where you can come empty your whole car out or anything like that. You'll have to get out, walk over and throw some trash away. But we'll work on that and hopefully we'll get a couple trash cans this year and then we'll buy it for the other ones.
Maybe we'll teach the kids in the park that you could walk to the trash and bring it. They seem to be doing better unless somebody's picking up after them.
Rick actually told me when I talked to him that as soon as they put the trash can out, he was going in and picking up a little trash and emptying the trash can instead of spending 45 minutes parking picking up trash.
Great,
He was excited to see us moving.
good. And that's- Next up, we have the board committee application process. And with it, Conservation Commission application from Smith.
So I asked for this, this is just me coming up to speed, but we received this application from Doug Smith to be on the Conservation Commission. And in talking in the office, the normal procedure had been to send this application to the Conservation Commission first to look through and then come to the select board. And so I understand that process. I think it kind of opens us up for, recommendations or not recommendations of not a super diverse board. I think the select board can look through the application and the qualifications and decide if it's a good applicant or not for any of the boards we have. And if for some reason they would like to ask the board what their thoughts are, we always have that. So I would like to send these directly to the select board with a recommendation that people applying for boards talk with board members or the chair of that committee to understand what the expectations.
So you want to send this to to the committees, the other boards?
I
No,
would
it's
not,
not.
I'm
I would not.
recommending not, that the
Not.
select board look through them and make
Okay.
their recommendation, but
Yeah.
I will be working, it was a good idea. I put it on my list to do of, it would be really easy for these boards to write up what the expectation of the board are, what their normal things they're working on, how many meetings a month, when do they normally meet? Those would be really easy things to have for people to pick up or get a copy of when you're looking at applying for boards.
I had been thinking about it for years now, and then it occurred to me, why would we do it at the kind of top end of the process when they can do it themselves? And it could be refined by the office to meet a standard set of formatting and expectations.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. When I was on the planning board, I was surprised that we were asked for our view, and I said in a meeting a few years ago that I didn't think it was appropriate for the planning board to select planning board members, because then you only end up with people that think the same way,
Mhm.
which does not necessarily serve the town as a whole best. So,
And we've definitely seen a non-recommendation come to us that I think was personality really, and I do worry about that, right? If you have cross personalities with somebody else, it doesn't mean you're not a qualified member. It may mean that you have an opposing viewpoint and you can strike a balance.
which is not to say the board should necessarily be able to weigh in and give their view on candidates, but I do think that it's appropriate for the select board to handle the appointments directly. And I think in the end, we could have the opportunity to get more diverse boards that way.
And you pointed out the timeline piece, which I
Yeah.
hadn't really thought a lot about,
I
but
mean,
it makes more sense.
This one, that's kind of what came to my mind. I know we're short on Conservation Commission members. Besides the diversity issue, this would have had to wait until the August meeting. and it would have had to come to the select board, so we'd be a month and a half,
Yeah.
2 months out before someone would be appointed.
Volunteers are like employees, are nice to come by.
Are we making a decision on this application
I'll make a
tonight?
motion that we appoint Doug Smith on Oak Hill Road to the Conservation Commission.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
How many Doug Smiths do we have? At least two. Do we have
At
three?
least
I
two.
think that's 5.
Five, okay.
Oh,
You-
maybe-
Hopefully,
I only know of two.
Douglas K. Smith of Oak Hill Road.
That's where I put my middle initial. in there.
Thank you. Yeah, I know there's multiples.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And then, did we have another one? Okay.
You have a form to sign, not an.
Oh, a form is right,
Form
okay.
paper.
I was like, where is
I'll
it?
have the form for this appointment for you at the next meeting. I'll let Doug know when it's ready to sign.
So now, we have the ordinance on the use of tobacco, cannabis, and vaping on public property.
So as you guys remember, we had the public hearing on this, had some discussion. We sent it to the attorney for review. I did learn there was a little bit of debate in the attorney's office, whether some ordinances need to go to town meeting for approval, some do not. There was some debate, but it did get a letter back from the attorney stating that they felt that the select board had the authority to manage town property, and that we could put this forward. In that, they did recommend, and there's 2 red line changes. You probably saw the red line changes better online than here,
Yep.
but they wanted us to take out properties operated by the town and just keep this restricted to town-owned properties, and that was the same change.
That makes sense. It's more clear.
Yeah, okay, yes.
I make a motion to adopt the use of tobacco, cannabis, and vaping devices on public property ordinance as heard at the public hearing on June 20th, 2022, with an implementation date of August 1st, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Aye. It's
Just
unanimous?
so you know, we put the August 1st in because we do have the designated smoking stations. And it's also solid before.
Right, so who's going to position those? Who's gonna define them?
DPW is gonna put them in.
Yeah.
Me and Kevin Marker, our recreation director, went around to all the parks and public
You
spaces.
did already,
We figured out where we were going.
okay?
You and Kevin have been busy.
I keep it pretty good.
All righty. Next up, we have just administrative items, some stuff to sign. Now, has Chase sold the junkyard?
Yes,
It's been cleared out, I
Pretty
hear.
clear, yeah.
So Berwick and Sons, are they gonna start a new junkyard?
they're continuing they own the business now,
Uh-huh,
so it's the same junkyard new owners.
okay.
I think there's scrappers. They're scrapping.
Oh,
I
okay,
don't know, it's completely thinking and clear right now.
yeah, right.
I just rode by there the other day.
That's amazing. That was a big territory there, full of stuff.
That's a major stand. Somewhere someone at DES is dancing. Here, I'll start passing these down.
Okay, thank you.
In the park like that.
Oh, yeah, it looked great.
Myself, how long it's been since I've seen months.
I wanted to go, but then my small friend went out on tour and came back. Not very nicely. Not deserving of going out in public again. Do we own that screen?
Yes.
Pretty nice.
That's a police department. Bought it, really nice elevator. And we did talk today, we're talking about recreation and the police about a better sound system. We will slowly upgrade it.
And what was the movie?
We watched Monsters Inc.
Okay,
I wonder if you're, as you're upgrading, consider a lot of them, you can buy a small device that goes in between, I'm not totally onto it, but we have one for, our church. And it, allows you to pick up the signal and your Bluetooth hearing aid, which is very cool, and it broadcasts quite well.
Actually, part of the change is gonna be a Bluetooth projector with
Wow.
Perfect. Look at us getting all modern.
prices come down slightly.
I saw one in Sam's Club the other day. Coralie asked if she could have it, and right as I was about to say no, I was like, I mean, no right now, but that's actually not that expensive.
We talked about it today, they have big Bluetooth speaker systems that are like professional DJ model, that big microphones and everything. $200 there, you get reach.
Oh, like you mean for the Christmas stuff that we, or the park?
Meeting or
lighting.
whatever else we want to do, but,
Yeah, because we had some hearing issues when we did the lighting. I think we just ended up yelling when the,
we talked about that, the police department said that they, people like to do things on recreation, and I think the town should as well, if we're gonna use it for meetings.
Town's getting pretty fancy.
kind of nice to be able to hear. That's kind of like how we discovered that the town meeting with the car radio was actually quite popular because people could hear so well.
I hit the certain age where I started getting probably 3 letters a week about hearing aids, all in the Upper Valley, right? I'm typecast.
Well, and it's also nice, I mean. we
You
play
can
the
just forward
music
those
in
on
the
to me.
park, people are
I have somebody I need.
been long enough that it's an ongoing event, that people should.
We've always been very frugal.
Yeah. No, I wanna maintain that, but it's
It's-
also.
no,
a
no,
great time when you
yeah.
say-
It's just one of those things where you, until the speaker dies or doesn't work, which is what happened at the tree lighting.
We have a possible bigger event.
Mr. Chair.
Public comment.
Oh, public comments. Yes, my apologies. No public comments. There's some informational items we can inform ourselves of. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All in favor? Aye.
I'll recycle that puppy, my favorite.